The stars looked cold and distant from the observation deck of Outpost Epsilon 9. Frank Nelson stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the darkness of space. He had been commander of this small human outpost on Proxima Centauri, B, for 3 years. The colony below had grown to almost 5,000 people. Farmers, scientists, families seeking a fresh start, all looking to the stars with hope rather than fear. That would change today. "Commander," called a voice from behind him. "The sensors picked up something." Frank turned to face Linda Powell, his chief communications officer. Her normally calm face showed worry. "Show me," he said simply. They walked quickly to the control room where other staff members stood around the main display. The screen showed 3 large objects moving toward their system. The objects were unlike any ships Frank had seen before. They had no clear shape, seeming to shift and flow like living things. "Zendari," whispered Sam Brown, the outpost's intelligence officer. The name sent a chill through the room. For 300 years, the Zendari collective had moved through the galaxy like a plague. They took over worlds, absorbed technologies, and added each conquered species to their growing hive mind. No one had ever stopped them. Many species now existed only as memories inside the collective. "Are you sure?" Frank asked, though he already knew the answer. Sam nodded. "The energy signature matches what we got from the Tellarite refugees last month. It's them." Frank made his decision quickly. "Send emergency signals to Earth. Tell them exactly what we're seeing. Linda, start evacuation plans for the colony." "There's no time for a full evacuation," Linda said. "Those ships will be here in hours." "Then we save who we can," Frank replied. "Priority to children and those with critical knowledge." As his team rushed to work, Frank sent a private message to Earth's United Defense Fleet headquarters. He kept it short. "Zendari vessels, approaching Proxima Centauri. 3 ships request immediate assistance. Preparing for contact." Frank knew help wouldn't arrive in time. The nearest battle group was 3 days away. His outpost had basic defenses, enough to stop pirates or handle small emergencies. Nothing that could fight the Zendari. On Luna, Admiral, Susan Wright received Frank's message while eating breakfast. She dropped her fork and immediately called an emergency meeting of the Defense Fleet's top officers. An hour later, she stood before 20 serious faces in the main conference room. The mood was grim. "The Zendari have reached Proxima Centauri," she said without greeting. "Our first colony outside the solar system is under direct threat. We all know what that means." The officers didn't need reminding. They had all studied the reports. The Zendari moved through space in their living ships, half machine and half organic. They didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They simply absorbed what they wanted and destroyed the rest. "Our closest ships can't get there." "For 3 days," said Admiral Wright. "By our best estimates, the colony has 5 hours at most." "We can't just abandon them," said Captain John Miller, pounding his fist on the table. "No one is suggesting that," Wright answered. "But I need real options, not just anger." The room fell silent as the officers realized how few choices they had. Then a voice spoke from the back of the room. "There might be a way to buy them time." All heads turned to look at Lieutenant Alan Hayes. He was young for his rank, with bright eyes that never seemed to rest. Hayes worked in the Theoretical Weapons Division, a place where unusual minds explored ideas too strange for regular military thinking. "Explain," ordered Wright. Hayes stepped forward. "The Zendari operate as a network. Their ships aren't separate units but parts of one thinking system. They communicate using quantum entanglement." He pressed a button, and a complex diagram appeared on the main screen. "My team has been studying this technology. We believe their network has a weakness. If we create a strong enough temporal distortion field, we might be able to disrupt their connection, maybe even freeze them in place." "Captain," Miller laughed without humor. "And where would we get this temporal distortion field?" "That's science fiction, Lieutenant." "Not exactly," Hayes said. "The research vessel USS Defiant has been fitted with the Kronos device. It's a prototype based on my research. It creates bubbles where time moves differently." Wright's eyes narrowed. "The Defiant is at the Jupiter Research Station." Even at top speed, it couldn't reach Proxima in time. It could if we used the experimental jump drive, Hayes said quietly. The room erupted in voices. The jump drive was another untested technology, designed to bend space rather than travel through it. A ship could potentially move vast distances in moments. But no one had dared try it with humans on board. Admiral Wright silenced the room with a raised hand. You're suggesting we send an untested ship with an untested drive to deploy an untested weapon against the most dangerous enemy humanity has ever faced? Hayes nodded. Yes, Admiral. It's the only chance Proxima has. Wright thought for a long moment, looking at the faces around her. Then she made her decision. Contact the Defiant. Tell them to prepare both the Kronos device and the jump drive. And find me a volunteer crew. To everyone's surprise, Hayes spoke up again. Request permission to join the mission, Admiral. No one understands the Kronos device better than I do. Wright studied him. Granted, but you'll need a captain who knows how to fight. I know just the person, Hayes said. 12 hours later, Captain Olivia Carter walked onto the bridge of the USS Defiant. She was not what most people expected in a starship captain. Small in height with short brown hair, she moved with quiet confidence. Her record spoke for itself. 3 successful defenses against pirates in the outer planets, plus a daring rescue of miners trapped on Venus. She never raised her voice or made grand speeches. She simply got the job done. The bridge crew stood as she entered. Lieutenant Hayes was already there, looking both excited and terrified. Captain on deck, announced Eric Johnson, the communications officer. At ease, Carter said. I understand. We're attempting 2 impossible things today. First, we're going to test a jump drive with human passengers. Then we're going to pick a fight with the Zendari. She looked at each crew member in turn. Anyone who wants to stay behind now is your chance, no marks on your record. No one moved. Carter nodded, pleased but not surprised. Lieutenant Hayes explained to me exactly how this Kronos device works. And don't use words I need a physics degree to understand. As Hayes began to explain, the Defiant prepared to make history, or die trying. Back at Proxima, Frank Nelson watched the Zendari ships grow larger on his screen. He had done all he could. Now he could only hope that Earth had some miracle to offer. He didn't know it yet, but that miracle was already on its way. The jump was nothing like Olivia Carter expected. One moment, the Defiant was near Jupiter. The next, stars stretched into lines her stomach seemed to turn inside out. And then they were somewhere else. The transition lasted less than 3 seconds, but those seconds felt both endless and instant. Jump complete, said Catherine Douglas, the chief engineer. Her voice shook slightly. All systems checking out. Location? Carter asked, fighting a wave of nausea. Eric Johnson checked his instruments. We're in the Proxima Centauri system. Captain, the jump worked perfectly. A cheer started but died quickly when the main screen showed what awaited them. 3 massive Zendari vessels moved toward the small planet where humanity had built its first colony outside the solar system. The alien ships looked like giant sea creatures made of metal and strange organic materials that seemed to pulse with light. Time to colony attack? Carter asked. 43 minutes, replied Lisa Morgan from the security station. Lieutenant Hayes stood from his station. Captain, we need to get the Kronos device ready. It will take at least 30 minutes to power up. Carter nodded. Do it. Dr. Peters, help him. William Peters, the ship's science officer, followed Hayes to the lower deck where the device waited. It didn't look impressive. Just a metal sphere surrounded by rings that would spin when activated. Yet this simple-looking machine might be humanity's only hope against the Zendari. How are our weapons? Carter asked Morgan. Standard plasma cannons and defense shields, Morgan answered. Against the Zendari. She didn't finish her sentence. Everyone knew human weapons had never stopped a Zendari ship before. Our job isn't to destroy them, Carter reminded her crew. We just need to buy time for the colony and test Hayes' theory about disrupting their network. On the colony planet below, Frank Nelson watched the Defiant appear on his sensors. At first he thought the reading was wrong. No human ship could have reached them so quickly. What is that, he asked. pointing at the small ship now between his colony and the approaching Zendari. Sam Brown checked the identification signal. "It's the USS Defiant, sir, a research vessel, but it shouldn't be possible for them to be here." "Send them a message," Frank ordered. "Ask what they're doing." Linda Powell tried to contact the ship. "They're responding, sir." A woman's face appeared on the screen. "This is Captain Olivia Carter of the USS Defiant. We're here to test a new defense against the Zendari. Start evacuating your critical personnel. We'll try to buy you time." Frank stared in disbelief. "Captain, you're one small ship against 3 Zendari vessels. What can you possibly do?" "Something they won't expect," Carter replied. "That's all I can say right now. Use whatever time we give you wisely." The communication ended. Frank turned to his staff. "You heard her. Continue the evacuation." Aboard the Defiant, Hayes and Peters worked quickly to prepare the Kronos device. "The theory is sound," Peters said as he checked connections. "But there are so many unknowns. We've never tested this at full power." Hayes nodded as he typed commands into the control panel. "I know. The time dilation field could be too weak to affect them, or it could be so strong it traps us forever." "Is that supposed to be comforting?" Peters asked with a small smile. "Just being honest," Hayes replied. "But it's the only idea we have that might work." The device began to hum as power flowed into it. The rings started to spin slowly, building speed with each passing minute. On the bridge, Carter received a message from Johnson. "Captain, the Zendari ships have noticed us. They're changing course to intercept." Carter had expected this. The Zendari always eliminated any resistance before attacking their main target. "How long until they reach us?" she asked. 8 minutes, Johnson replied. Carter opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, prepare for encounter with Zendari vessels. Hayes, what's the status of the Kronos device?" "Almost ready, Captain," Hayes' voice came back. "We need 5 more minutes for full power." "We might not have 5 minutes," Carter said. "Do your best." The Zendari ships approached faster than expected. Their organic mechanical design allowed them to move in ways no human ship could match. "They're scanning us," Johnson reported. "Very intense scans. They seem confused." "That makes sense," Morgan said. "They've conquered dozens of species, but they've never met humans before. They don't know what to expect from us." "Let's keep it that way," Carter replied. "Evasive pattern Delta. Don't let them get a good reading on our systems." The Defiant moved in an unpredictable pattern, but the Zendari adjusted quickly. One of the alien ships fired a beam of energy that the Defiant barely avoided. "That was just a warning," Morgan said. "Next time they won't miss." The bridge shook as another energy beam grazed their shields. "Shields at 80%, Morgan reported. "Hayes," Carter called. "We need that device now." In the lower deck, Hayes and Peters worked frantically. "Almost there," Hayes replied. 30 seconds. The ship rocked again, harder this time. "Direct hit," Morgan shouted. "Shields at 60%. Hayes watched the final power sequence complete. "It's ready, Captain." "Activate it now," Carter ordered. Hayes pressed the activation command. The rings of the Kronos device spun so fast, they became a blur. A bright blue light filled the lower deck and then spread throughout the ship. On the bridge, Carter and her crew watched as the blue light extended beyond their ship, reaching toward the approaching Zendari vessels. "What should we expect?" Carter asked. "If it works?" Hayes' voice came through the comm system. "A localized time dilation field. Inside the field, time will flow differently than outside." The blue light enveloped the closest Zendari ship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, incredibly, the alien vessel appeared to slow down. Not just slow, it began to stop completely, frozen in space. "It's working," Johnson whispered. The blue field expanded further, catching the second and then the third Zendari ship. All 3 vessels hung in space, energy weapons still visible but the destructive beams suspended in mid-flight. "I don't believe it," Morgan said. "They're completely stopped." Hayes' voice came through, filled with equal parts disbelief and excitement. The temporal field is stable. To them, time has nearly stopped. To us, they appear frozen. Carter stood from her chair, staring at the impossible sight before her. "Get a message to the colony," she ordered Johnson. "Tell them to use this time to evacuate as many people as possible and send word to Earth. Tell them—" She paused, looking at the frozen Zendari ships. "Tell them one human ship just stopped the unstoppable." For the first few minutes, the crew of the Defiant simply stared at the frozen Zendari ships. No one spoke. What they were seeing should not have been possible. "How long will they stay like that?" Captain Carter finally asked. Hayes checked the readings from the Kronos device. "Hard to say. The device is using massive amounts of power. Maybe a few hours at most." "That gives us a window," Carter said. She turned to Dr. Peters. "This is an opportunity we can't waste. I want to know everything possible about those ships." Peters nodded. "I'll start deep scans right away." "I'll help," Hayes offered. "We need to understand how their quantum network functions if we want to find a more permanent solution." Carter agreed. "Johnson, maintain contact with the colony. I want updates on their evacuation every 15 minutes." On the planet below, Frank Nelson watched the miracle unfold on his screens. The 3 Zendari ships hung motionless in space, caught in the strange blue field that extended from the small research vessel. "How many shuttles do we have ready?" he asked Linda. 5 large transport shuttles," she replied. "Each can carry 50 people. We've loaded children and essential personnel first." Frank made a quick calculation. "That's only 250 people out of nearly 5,000. He shook his head. "Not enough." Sam approached with a suggestion. "Sir, we have the construction ships. They're not designed for passengers, but each could hold another 20 people in emergency conditions." Frank nodded. "Get them ready, and contact the farming outposts. Tell them to bring everyone to the main launch area." Back on the Defiant, Peters and Hayes worked together, gathering data on the frozen Zendari vessels. "This is amazing," Peters said as he studied the scan results. "Their ships are partly alive. The outer hull contains organic components that can repair themselves." Hayes focused on the energy readings. "Look at these patterns. The 3 ships aren't just communicating. They're thinking as one entity across multiple vessels. That explains why they stopped completely when caught in our field," Peters realized. "If one part of their network experiences a time disruption, the entire system has to adjust." The science officer brought up another scan on his screen. "The internal structure is unlike anything I've seen. There are chambers that might be for captured species." Hayes looked closer. "Not just captured. See these neural interfaces? They're designed to absorb knowledge directly from the brains of the conquered." On the bridge, Carter received a report from Johnson. "Captain, the colony has launched their first wave of evacuation shuttles. They're heading to the far side of the system, away from the Zendari." "Good," Carter replied. "How long until our reinforcements arrive?" "The battle group is still 48 hours away at maximum speed," Johnson said. Carter frowned. "Our temporal field won't last that long. We need another solution." Catherine Douglas, who had been monitoring the ship's power systems, spoke up. "Captain, the Kronos device is draining our power faster than expected. At this rate, we have maybe 5 hours before systems failure." "Could we shut down non-essential systems to extend that time?" Carter asked. "I've already done that," Douglas replied. "Life support and the Kronos device are using almost all our power now." Carter made a decision. "Hayes, Peters, I need options. If we can't maintain this field until help arrives, we need another way to stop these ships." In the science lab, Hayes studied the scans with growing excitement. "I think I see a weakness," he told Peters. "Their quantum communication system is vulnerable to disruption." "What kind of disruption?" Peters asked. "Their network operates on perfect synchronicity," Hayes explained. "Every part must be in perfect harmony with every other part. But if we introduced a cascading error into that system—" "Like a virus," Peters said, catching on. "Exactly," Hayes nodded. "We could use the remaining power of the Kronos device to send a disruption signal through their frozen ships. When the temporal field collapses, The disruption would spread throughout their entire network. They brought the idea to Captain Carter, who listened carefully. This disruption, she asked, would it be permanent? No, Hayes admitted. They would eventually adapt and recover, but it might give us days instead of hours, enough time for the battle group to arrive. And the colony to evacuate more people, Carter added. How soon can you have this disruption signal ready? 2 hours, Hayes estimated. We'll need to map their entire quantum network first. Do it, Carter ordered. While Hayes and Peters worked on the disruption signal, the evacuation continued below. Frank Nelson coordinated the movement of people to the shuttles, prioritizing those most likely to help humanity survive. Launch when ready, he told the shuttle pilots. Don't wait for stragglers. Get these people to safety. One by one, shuttles and construction ships lifted from the surface, carrying precious human lives away from danger. Each ship took a different route, spreading out to make it harder for the Zendari to track them all. On the Defiant, Carter received regular updates on the colony's progress. They've evacuated about 800 people so far, Johnson reported. At this rate, they might get half the colony out before our field fails. Morgan, who had been watching the Zendari ships closely, noticed something concerning. Captain, there's a change in the energy pattern of the center ship. It's subtle, but they might be adapting to our field already. Carter turned to Douglas. How much time do we have? Power levels at 42%, Douglas replied. 4 hours at most. Carter opened a channel to the science lab. Hayes, Peters, we may be running out of time. How's that disruption signal? Coming. Nearly finished mapping their network, Hayes replied. We need another hour to create the signal. You might not have an hour, Carter told him. The Zendari are starting to adapt. Hayes and Peters exchanged worried glances. We'll need to take shortcuts, Peters said. It will make the signal less effective. Do what you can, Carter ordered. We don't need perfect. We just need enough to slow them down. As they worked frantically to complete the disruption signal, the blue temporal field surrounding the ships began to flicker. The center Zendari vessel showed small movements, tiny shifts that indicated it was beginning to break free. They're fighting the field, Morgan reported. The temporal effect is weakening. Carter made a ship-wide announcement. All hands prepare for possible Zendari counterattack. Hayes, we need that signal now. In the science lab, Hayes and Peters finished their work just as the ship's lights dimmed. Power at 28%, Douglas warned. Hayes looked at the completed signal on his screen. It wasn't perfect, but it might be enough. Signal ready, Captain, he reported. Uploading to main systems now. Carter gave the order everyone had been waiting for. Target the center ship and fire the disruption signal. The Defiant released a pulse of energy directly into the weakening temporal field. The pulse hit the center Zendari ship, penetrating its partially awakening systems. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the center ship's lights flickered and strange energy patterns rippled across its surface. It's working, Hayes said, watching the readings. The disruption is spreading through their network. All 3 Zendari ships began to show signs of internal chaos as the signal moved through their connected systems. Now we wait, Carter said, and hope we've bought enough time. The next hour was tense on the bridge of the Defiant. Everyone watched the Zendari ships, looking for signs that the disruption signal was working. Slowly, the temporal field continued to weaken as the Kronos device drained the last of the ship's power. Power at 15%, Douglas reported. We have maybe 2 hours before complete failure. Hayes studied the readings from the Zendari vessels. The disruption signal is spreading through their systems, but slower than I hoped. Their adaptive capabilities are impressive. Will it be enough? Carter asked. Hard to say, Hayes admitted. But we've definitely hurt them. The center Zendari ship began to move slightly, fighting against the weakening temporal field. Its movements were jerky and uncoordinated, like a person trying to walk while dizzy. They're confused, Peter said. The disruption is affecting their control systems. On the planet, Frank Nelson received a message from the Defiant explaining the situation. He increased the speed of the evacuation, knowing they might have less time than expected. We've loaded 15 shuttles so far, Linda reported. About 1,200 people have left the planet. That's not enough, Frank said. Keep them moving, no delays. Sam approached with news. Sir, long-range sensors show multiple small objects leaving the Zendari ships. I think they're launching some kind of probes. Frank's face showed concern. They must be adapting. The Defiance trick won't work forever. He sent an urgent message to Captain Carter warning her about the probes. On the Defiant, Morgan spotted the small objects on her security screens. Captain, we have multiple launches from the Zendari vessels. Small craft moving slowly but accelerating. Target analysis? Carter asked. They appear to be heading toward the planet, Morgan said. They're avoiding our temporal field. Carter made a quick decision. We can't let them reach the colony. Morgan, prepare to fire plasma cannons. Target the nearest probes. But Captain, Johnson said, if we use weapons, we'll drain our power even faster. We have no choice, Carter replied. Those probes could carry weapons or worse. Hayes, what do you think they are? Hayes checked the scans. Based on what we've learned about Zendari technology, they could be neural integration drones. They'll try to establish links with the colony systems or even directly with people. Fire when ready, Carter ordered. The Defiance plasma cannons fired, destroying the two nearest probes. But there were at least a dozen more, spreading out to make targeting difficult. Power dropping to 11%, Douglas warned. We can't keep firing without risking the Kronos device. Carter turned to Hayes. We need options. Fast. Hayes thought for a moment. The probes must be communicating with the main ships using the same quantum network. If we modify our disruption signal to target their specific frequency, we could disable them all at once. Peters finished his thought. Do it, Carter ordered. While Hayes and Peters worked on modifying the signal, more shuttles lifted off from the colony. Frank Nelson directed the evacuation from the surface, moving people as quickly as possible. They had loaded nearly half the colony now, but time was running out. One of the Zendari probes evaded the Defiance defenses and reached the colony's main complex. It attached itself to the communications tower and began to interface with the systems. Cut all connections to that tower, Frank ordered when he saw what was happening. Physical disconnection only. Don't trust any electronic shutdowns. Workers rushed to sever cables with cutting tools while security personnel tried to remove the probe with weapons. The probe seemed to resist, releasing small mechanical arms that dug into the tower's structure. Sir, it's trying to access our main database, Sam reported. It's going after our records of Earth's location and defenses. Destroy that tower if you have to, Frank ordered. We cannot let them get that information. On the Defiant, Hayes finished the modified disruption signal. Ready, Captain. But we'll need to drop the temporal field completely to broadcast this new signal at full strength. If we do that, the Zendari ships will be free to move, Morgan pointed out. Not immediately, Hayes said. Our previous signal is still working. Through their systems. They'll be disoriented for a short time. Carter weighed the risks. How many more shuttles need to launch from the colony? Johnson checked the reports. At least 20 more to get everyone out. That's too many, Carter said softly. Then, making her decision. Hayes, prepare to drop the field and send the new signal. Douglas, divert all remaining power to engines and weapons. We may need to fight our way out. Aye, Captain, the crew responded. Hayes entered the commands and the blue temporal field surrounding the ships began to fade. As it disappeared, the three Zendari vessels started to move more freely, though their movements were still erratic. Field, down, Hayes reported. Broadcasting new signal now. A pulse of energy left the Defiant, spreading throughout the area. When it reached the Zendari probes, they froze in place, then began to fall from the sky. Their systems completely shut down. The probe at the colony's communications tower stopped moving, its mechanical arms going limp. Colony security personnel quickly removed it and destroyed it completely. But now the Defiant faced a new problem. Without the temporal field, the Zendari ships were recovering quickly. The center ship turned toward the Defiant, its weapon systems beginning to power up. They're targeting us, Morgan warned. Energy readings indicate they're preparing to fire. Evasive maneuvers, Carter ordered. Douglas, can we jump out of here? The jump drive needs 6 hours to recharge, Douglas replied. We don't have that kind of time. The Zendari ship fired, and the Defiant barely managed to avoid the beam of energy. The human vessel was faster and more maneuverable, but the Zendari weapons had far greater range and power. We can't outrun them forever, Morgan said as another near miss rocked the ship. Hayes looked at his readings with sudden interest. Captain, the battle group sent reinforcements ahead. 6 fast attack ships are entering the system now. Carter felt a moment of hope. Open a channel to them. We need to coordinate our defense. The 6 human ships appeared on the long-range sensors, moving quickly toward the Defiant's position. They were small compared to the Zendari vessels, but they were fast and armed with the latest weapons. Channel open, Johnson reported. This is Captain Olivia Carter of the USS Defiant, she said. We've managed to disrupt the Zendari control systems, but our power is nearly gone. We need immediate assistance. Understood, Defiant, came the reply. This is Commander Joe Butler of the 5th Fast Response Squadron. Hold on, help is coming. The 6 fast attack ships spread out in a defensive formation around the Defiant. They were much smaller than the research vessel, but each carried advanced weapons designed to punch through heavy shields. Defiant, this is Commander Butler. Our orders are to protect you until the main battle group arrives. Admiral Wright says you've made history today. We appreciate the help, Commander, Carter replied, but we're not out of danger yet. The 3 Zendari ships were recovering from the disruption signal. Though still moving erratically, their weapon systems were coming back online. The largest ship fired at one of the human attack vessels, narrowly missing it. They're faster than expected, Butler noted. All ships attack pattern Omega. Focus fire on the lead vessel. The human ships darted around the much larger Zendari vessels, firing precisely targeted shots at what Hayes had identified as vulnerable points. The Zendari ships tried to track the smaller, faster vessels, but the disruption signal had affected their targeting systems. On the Defiant, power levels continued to drop. 8%, Douglas reported. Life support is minimal. We need to consider evacuation. Carter nodded. Johnson, contact the colony. How many people remain on the surface? About 2,000, Johnson replied after checking the reports. They're loading shuttles as fast as possible. Carter made her decision. Send a message to Commander Butler. We need his ships to cover the colony evacuation. The Defiant will serve as a distraction. Hayes looked alarmed. Captain, with our power levels, we can't withstand direct fire from even one Zendari ship. I know, Carter said calmly, but we still have one advantage. They want to capture our technology. They won't destroy us if they can avoid it. On the planet, Frank Nelson received the message from the Defiant. He watched as 5 of the fast attack ships broke off to protect the colony, while the Defiant and 1 attack ship confronted the Zendari vessels. She's buying us time, he told his staff. Don't waste it. Get everyone to the remaining shuttles. The evacuation speed doubled with the protection of the 5 attack ships. The small human vessels destroyed any Zendari probes that approached the colony, allowing the shuttles to take off safely. Meanwhile, the Defiant performed a dangerous maneuver, flying directly toward the center Zendari ship. The human vessel was almost out of power, but the Zendari didn't know that. They think we're attacking, Morgan observed. Good, Carter replied. Let them think we have some secret weapon. It might make them hesitate. The Zendari ship adjusted its position, moving to intercept the Defiant. It fired warning shots, carefully avoiding direct hits, just as Carter had predicted. They want to capture us, Hayes said. They're curious about the Kronos device. Then let's give them something more to think about, Carter ordered. Hayes, can we create one more disruption signal with our remaining power? Hayes checked the keys. Systems. Yes, but it would use everything we have left. We'd be dead in space afterward. Do it, Carter said. Target their weapon systems specifically this time. While Hayes prepared the final signal, the attack ship accompanying the Defiant continued to harass the Zendari vessels, drawing fire away from the nearly powerless research vessel. On the colony, Frank supervised the loading of the final shuttles. That's the last group, Linda reported. Only the essential staff remain. Frank nodded. Good. You and Sam take the next shuttle. I'll follow on the last one. Sir, you should go now, Sam argued. It's too dangerous to wait. I'm not leaving until everyone else is safe, Frank said firmly. That's final. Back on the Defiant, Hayes completed the preparations for the final disruption signal. Ready, Captain. But this will drain our last reserves. Everyone to emergency stations, Carter ordered. Prepare for complete power loss. The crew rushed to secure vital systems and don protective gear as life support prepared to shut down. Fire the signal, Carter ordered once everyone was ready. Hayes activated the command and the Defiant released one final pulse of energy directly at the approaching Zendari vessel. The pulse hit the alien ship squarely, and immediately its weapons went dark. Direct hit on their weapons systems, Morgan reported with satisfaction. Then, as predicted, the Defiant's lights flickered and went out. Emergency lighting provided minimal visibility as all systems shut down. We're dead in space, Douglas confirmed. Everything except basic life support is gone. The Zendari ship approached the powerless Defiant cautiously. Without weapons, it could no longer threaten the human vessel, but it could still capture it. They're extending some kind of docking tube, Johnson reported, watching on a backup screen powered by emergency batteries. Just as we wanted, Carter said. They'll try to board us, but we have no way to fight them off, Morgan pointed out. Carter smiled slightly. We don't need to. Look. On the screen, 12 large ships appeared at the edge of the system. The Earth battle group had arrived early, pushing their engines to the limit after receiving word of the Defiant's success. Perfect timing, Carter said. The Earth ships immediately engaged the Zendari vessels, with their weapons disabled and their systems still suffering from the disruption signals. The alien ships were at a severe disadvantage. The battle was brief but intense. 2 of the Zendari vessels managed to escape, jumping to some unknown coordinates, but the largest ship, the one preparing to board the Defiant, was captured. Within hours, Earth shuttles arrived to evacuate the crew of the Defiant. As Carter prepared to leave her ship, Hayes approached her. We did it, he said, still sounding surprised. We actually stopped them. Yes, Carter agreed. Though I don't think this is the end. The 2 ships that escaped will report back to their collective. They'll adapt to our tactics. But now we have their ship to study, Hayes pointed out. And we know their weakness. Humanity has a fighting chance now. As the last shuttle left the colony, Frank Nelson looked back at the world they had built. It wasn't a final goodbye. They would return once the danger had passed. But it still hurt to leave. His shuttle joined dozens of others heading toward the Earth battle group. On the main communication channel, Admiral Susan Wright spoke to all the evacuees and military personnel. Today marks a turning point, she said. For centuries, the Zendari collective has expanded unchecked across the galaxy. Today, one human ship stopped them cold. The knowledge we've gained will help protect not just humanity, but all free species threatened by the collective. As Frank's shuttle approached the Earth flagship, he saw the crew of the Defiant being welcomed aboard with cheers and applause. Captain Carter, Lieutenant Hayes, and the others had become instant heroes. Frank understood why. They had done more than save a colony. They had given the galaxy something it had lacked for centuries when facing the Zendari: hope. The Zendari would return, of course, but next time, humanity would be ready. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the 2 escaped Zendari ships carried an unexpected message back to their collective. A warning about a species that could freeze time itself, a species that refused to be conquered, a species called humans.